All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic interview. First, thank you to Sunstone and Grace Poole, who is managing our audio and our AV. And thanks to everyone who is joining us for this live interview with two of my good friends. I'm so excited to have this conversation in the midst of such like a heavy story and heavy discussion. I have the stars. Can I call you the stars?
Are we stars now?
I don't know if that applies.
I mean, look at your hair. Like that is star quality hair. So I was just telling her off screen, she reminds me of Taylor Swift. I'm a big Swiftie. So
Just the hair though, just the hair. And can I go on record now and say that she copied me?
absolutely. I think that the history supports that.
Yes.
So yeah, we're here because we're all featured in a docu-series on Hulu by ABC, and it's called Daughters of the Colts, and you are the said Daughters of the Colts. So I'd love to welcome Celia and Anna LeBaron. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel really lucky that we get to talk to you.
We feel really lucky that you participated and that we get to talk to you here in this long form interview.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and just a shout out to our director and producer, Sarah Mast, who made this possible. She did such a great job. Whenever, we do projects like this, I've been on several projects like this, you never know how they're going to handle this story. And I think we're all pretty happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to love about it. The way they produced it, the way the art, the music, I mean, so much. And then this is probably the best way that our story has ever been handled in the media. And so we are very grateful. So here's how we feel is Sarah did not have enough episodes. So we're kind of going to call this episode 6,
Okay.
where we get to include things that maybe ended up on the editing floor that we had said or that we thought were important that maybe didn't fit the story in the way they wanted to tell it.
Or the time.
Because 5 episodes was not a lot. And Sarah had went to bat for a 6th episode, and that was not given to her. So we're going to help we're going to make this our 6th episode. How about that?
Good exclusive content just here at Sunstone. Thank you so much. And for those who aren't aware, Sunstone is a Mormon open forum. We're based in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm the executive director, and it's sort of my day job. And what we do is we provide a forum for Mormons of all stripes, and we're using the term Mormon to be a large umbrella term to include Latter-day Saints, but also folks like yourself who were born under a tradition that sort of follows Joseph Smith and what he started. It's very large and expansive. There are over 400 groups within the Mormon community. And so what we do at Sunstone is we study those and we give platform to different voices so people can learn new ideas and learn about our faith as an insider and as an outsider. And so we appreciate all the support for Sunstone here. If you want to support the work we're doing, go to sunstone.org and you can follow us. We have 2 podcasts. We have a history podcast where we are my co-host Brian Buchanan is going to be diving into the history of the LeBaron family and how you guys got in Mexico and all of that. So yeah, follow us at sunstone.org. And why don't we go ahead and get into the interview? Let's pretend someone is just clicking on this for the first time. They know nothing about the show. Why don't you each tell us a little bit about yourselves and some of your background?
So Anna and I were both born in Colonia, LeBaron, Chihuahua, Mexico, in a fundamentalist Mormon cult commune. Our father had 13, it was actually 14, but Wiki says 13. So he had 14 wives.
Wiki is wrong.
Yeah, he had 14 wives and more than 50 children. And total, because our mother had other children that weren't our dad's, total Anna and I have 55 siblings as near as we can count.
And then there's the stepchildren from the other wives who were brought into the marriage. So when you start adding all those in, everybody that counts comes up with a different number. And so like we said in the interview, polygamist math is hard.
Yeah.
I loved that part in the show when they were asking everybody how many siblings they had, because, I work with a lot of polygamous communities, and I love asking people that grew up in plural families, how many siblings, but my favorite one, and I'll ask you this, is how many cousins do you have?
Oh, heavens. No clue whatsoever.
Yeah, no one
That
ever.
is like mind-boggling work, and can anybody actually ever count that?
Can anyone just take on that project for us? Is anybody listening? Because we don't want to do that.
Somebody
You're gonna
good
need a
with
lot of group.
spreadsheets, and maybe one of those butcher paper rollouts, where you can keep
Really big.
track. Yeah. Somebody good with that kind of numbers and that's good at mathing.
So we both fall under the Mormon umbrella, but kind of explain how you're not part of the mainstream church. So in your background, how do you fit into the Mormon umbrella?
So the way we describe it is we say we're fundamentalist Mormon. We were born, like, we're not fundamentalist Mormon today, but we were born into a fundamentalist Mormon family. And so the way we describe that is, fundamentalist Mormons are those who continued practicing polygamy or currently practice polygamy. But again, there's a lot of groups that fall under that umbrella name of fundamentalist Mormon.
I would say that we were not born into, but we came to be part of the church called the Church of the Lamb of God. And that was our father's. He organized that in 1972 when he and his brother Joel had a falling out. They had first been part of right there in Colonia, LeBaron. It was
The Church of the Firstborn.
The Church of the Firstborn of the Fullness of Times. But then when they had a falling out, our father organized a new church. And then, as you know, or maybe not, but he eventually killed off his brother Joel to try to take over all of, the organization, but he was unsuccessful at doing that.
And again, Brian Buchanan, our historian, is going to be covering that history next week in a live interview in the group. So if you want to know more about how their group came to be, you can follow that. And I'm just curious, as like growing up Mormon, did you read the Book of Mormon? Did you sing any of the hymns? Did you pray? Like,
good question. Yes, we did the whole Mormon prayers with arms folded in front, not like this. And we
grew up singing all the little nursery songs.
Oh, yes.
Popcorn popping on the apricot tree.
little
and
purple pansies touched with yellow gold.
Yeah.
We are sunshine. What's the one?
Yeah.
I can't think of him anymore, but yeah, all the Mormon hymns as children, you probably remember those because you were
the
little.
Mormon hymns.
But we sang out of the regular Mormon hymnal.
Right.
Next, the 6th episode is just us performing popcorn popping. Because I'm sure outsiders are like, what? It's a cute little song.
One of the stories I have in my book is that in Mexico, I was taking a notebook and a pen and directly copying the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith into a notebook, because I was so studious and,
She was trying to get some positive praise, which it gave her. But we used the Book of Mormon, of course, the King James Version of the Bible.
No, the Joseph Smith translation.
No, we didn't.
No.
We read out of the King James Version of the Bible. We had the Journal of Discourses. We had
Doctrine and
Covenants, Pearl of Great Price.
And then all of
that.
the pamphlets that our dad wrote, there's a lot that he wrote.
We studied a lot out of our own father's materials as well.
Yeah, there's a whole story about you guys in the 1950s. I'm excited that Brian's covering it because it's, stuff we didn't have time for in the doc. So can you help viewers understand what was taking place in your family when you were born? What was going on with the church and the religion at the time?
So I was born in December of 1968. And this is when the rift between Joel and Herbal was either in full force or beginning. In 1969, when I was 9 months old, is when my mom told me that Herbal LeBaron, his followers, and all them were asked to leave the LeBaron colony, or had to leave, or I don't know what the exact story is, but my mom took her children. I was one of the last of Herbal LeBaron's children born in the LeBaron colony because of that. And so
She was 9 months old. I was 3 when we left the colony and moved to California. And I've never been back to Colonia LeBaron in all my life. So since I
I've
was
been
3.
back as an adult a number of times just to visit.
Yeah, I actually want to talk about that because I think that segs into my next question, which is this project, this documentary, you know, what made you want to participate in something like this? Because I know from experience that this is a really tricky thing you're going publicly, you're talking about your own trauma and your experiences online to millions of people, you know, #1 on Hulu right now. So what was your experience with your family, talking about getting your family on board for this, and why did you want to why did you decide to tell your story in this way?
Well, I will say that I was never okay with anyone knowing I was a LeBaron. When I got divorced in 2009, I kept my ex-husband's name because I didn't want anybody to ever connect me with him. I had a lot of shame about being who I was and where I came from. And I was afraid of my children being ostracized, or my children being ostracized from our community, and maybe not letting them play at my house, even though I knew there was no more danger because the cult ended in like early 90s, 92, 93. And I didn't move to this area until 1998 when my children were young. So I was very much closed mouthed. If someone asked me, how many siblings do you have? Just a normal conversation. I didn't want to lie. I was raised with so many lies. I was like really adamant about, I will never say another lie in my life. And so I would say my mother had 12 children. And that's shocking enough. And
which is the
didn't
truth.
need to go further. No one questioned, but what about her dad? So that's how I kind of skirted over that question without, you know, saying anything that wasn't true. And I remember when Facebook became a thing, one of my older sisters, not Anna, said something about polygamy in a post that I was tagged in or something, or that I was, you know, included in. And I was just like, you need to go delete that. And I don't want anyone to know that I have anything to do with the polygamy and all that nonsense and all that evil and, you know, wickedness that happened. And I love this sister so much.
You threatened to block her.
I
She didn't.
threatened to unfriend her. I was like, and I adore her. Like, she was my second mama. But I was just like, I can't have this shadow over my life or my children's life. And then
I decided to write
Anna wrote a book. And well, we had always talked about us, you know, we would write a book someday. And when Anna was like, well, now I actually have a contract to write a book. Can I use your real name? Just think about it. You don't need to, you know, decide right now. And I was like, 100% you can use my name, because I didn't have to think about it for a moment. I'm like, I am 100% behind you. And whatever happens with that, we'll just figure it out. But my children were already, you know, 18 or older. They were in adulthood, young adulthood. But I was like, I'm not worried anymore about that. And I did talk to my kids too. And they're like, absolutely, you know, it's fine. So that's when I dipped my toe in the water of having people know. And then she started, when her book came out, she started dragging me to all these book clubs and making me talk about my story. And so it's her fault. It's all her fault.
But I want to go on the record and say that she had the idea to write a book long before I did. And she already has the title picked out long before I started writing a book. So if you're in the comments, let us know if you would love to read a copy of her book when she decides to write it. No pressure. No pressure.
She pressures me a lot. She does. But
like, I'm just glad that I went first, because my story is tame compared to hers. As you guys saw, if you've watched the documentary.
I was in a little bit longer. 6 years longer.
Lord have mercy.
Just more experience.
Oh, I was just in it a little bit longer. No, Celia, you suffered so much more. I got out at 13. I was never indoctrinated. I never believed it.
She didn't even know the telestial, terrestrial, and celestial.
Listen, why do we have to bring up old stuff?
Well, that's in the documentary. People are
it
gonna
was
see
like
it.
yesterday.
I'm like, hush, you don't know what you're talking about. But I was fully indoctrinated and in fact served a mission for my cult.
Oh yeah, I would read a book on the mission alone. That's so interesting. I love that part in the documentary where you're like, no one was really buying it. Didn't have a lot of success with your converts. Anna, didn't we meet when you were writing your book, or right before your book came out? I think I was doing your polygamy podcast.
Yes.
We had connected, and we've known each other almost a decade now, I think.
Oh my gosh. So you interviewed me when my book came out. And I remember that interview because I had never heard of the Year of Polygamy podcast, but I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for sure. And so I had to go and like listen to a few episodes, and it was like now anyway, you interviewed me, and what I recognized, well, you were interviewing me and you were super kind and sweet about it, and you didn't point it out, but you knew more about my family history than I did.
To be fair, I know a lot about people's family history more than they're more.
Yes. And so because you would ask me questions
About
like
Lucinda, I remember
you asked me a
asking
few
about Lucinda.
questions, and like I'm thinking, I don't know. And then you would just really
Fill in the gaps.
But just in a really nice way. I didn't ever feel like I was dumb or anything. But then here's what happened. I was on a book tour that lasted like 4 months. So literally I listened to the entire Year of Polygamy podcast while I was driving 23,000 miles or whatever we covered during those 4 months. Listened to the whole thing so I could educate myself about my own family of origin.
Oh, listen, so you could tell her history.
I was happy to help. I really was. And it's been interesting on this project because I think we've connected with so many more members of your family and things like that. And that's what I'm super curious about. What was that like? Because I know that there is always a hesitation. Like you said, Celia, like the shame that carries, especially with the LeBaron name, it's a big deal. How did you get your family on board? How did that happen?
Okay, so before we talk about that, talking about the name and the LeBaron family name and carrying it.
And how I hid myself under my ex-husband's
name. She hid behind her ex-husband's name, but as of this morning, I went with her to the county courthouse here in Texas, and Celia has officially changed her name legally back to LeBaron.
Because we've decided that we're going to change that narrative about what it means to be a LeBaron, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
And Erbil doesn't get to decide what it means to be a LeBaron anymore.
He does not have the last word.
He doesn't get the last word on that. And so we are reclaiming the LeBaron name. And here's one of the reasons why. We are so proud of our family for everything that we've overcome. Like almost literally every odd was stacked against us based on our family of origin. And in the early 90s, when the cult burned itself to the ground, every one of us has had to work really hard to pick up the pieces, the goodness that was left, that didn't burn itself out. We took those good things that came and have had to rebuild our lives from the ground up, almost all of us without parents to help us. The adults were either dead or in jail.
Or were rejected you because you were an apostate.
Right.
Like even those that had parents, they didn't have parents that were supportive or helpful. They were more toxic.
And so we're so proud of our family, even the family members that are talked about in this documentary, that
The KOG,
that's how they're known. Every one of them, even the ones that are serving time in prison, there's not one single one of them that believes that Erbil was a prophet. Not one single one of them that is going to pick up the book of the new covenant the way they said. We're so upset that line was left in there because that narrative is so false. It's been over 30 years, people. It's been over 30 years. And the LeBarons, especially the KOGers, are the ones who want that narrative stopped the most.
and they're the ones that suffered the most. Like you think Anna's book, her story is sad and horrible, and she thinks mine is even harder than hers. They had it worse than anybody. And they are just turning into just the loveliest people.
Yeah.
And the kindest and have the most generous hearts.
And we
And
love them.
we love them and we embrace them. They used to terrify us
Right.
when they were still in KOG, but none of them are.
In my book, I talked about when I reconnected with them for the first time, and it was completely by happenstance. I ended up moving to a city that was right where they all lived, and I didn't know it. And I was literally terrified. But then after we got together and we started talking.
But let me first tell you, she
Whoa.
started getting together with them and she's saying, Celia, come and do this. And I'm like, no, I don't want anywhere near them. They are too scary and we don't know what they're about and it's not worth the risk. And I am so glad. I am so grateful. Anna drags me into all kinds of stuff. And she just eventually dragged me into that. And I am just like, they deserve so much love and so much compassion. And they're just so grateful that I'm, changing and being, and it's been years and years, but especially now, just they know how I feel about them and how much respect and regard and how much love I have for them now. And I never would have been able to have that if Anna hadn't really stayed the course and said they need a chance. And I think everybody needs to give them a chance.
Yeah. And again, some of our family have been very reticent to make those connections. And we understand that too, because the fear that's there is based on real events that happened. And
when
that
they
trauma,
were children, they were children,
the body keeps the score, the trauma stays. And so overcoming that and being willing to make those connections is a very big decision, and it's hard. And I mean, it was hard for me, but once you get there, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been missing out.
Right.
And here's the other part. When my book came out, I had a little, book release party, and so many of my family members came together for that.
Some that had not ever seen each other in
Some-
30 years.
And
And were afraid a little bit.
they
and
had some
uncomfortable
trepidation about it. And so,
but connecting them
Yes.
again, Anna doing that thing that she does so well, keep getting people together, and then they see these people they haven't seen or talked to in 35 years or whatever, and just realizing they love them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they suffered and I want to pour love on them.
and so that's one of the things about the documentary that just, there wasn't enough time to convey, is just how much our family has been reunited and reconnected. Of course, not everyone. This stuff takes time. And even people that when I wrote the book, they distance themselves from me and still maintain a little bit of distance because they don't want
They
that.
weren't comfortable with it.
They don't want to be connected to the story in its modern day version. Like they want to put it in the past and leave it there. And I completely respect that, and respect that they have a journey and their timeline of healing and what they want to do and boundaries that they need to set for their own mental health and well-being. I 100% respect and admire and support. And so I'm not saying everybody has to do what I've done, but I am so glad that I have been able to reconnect with our family. And that's just not something that was conveyed enough. The redemption that our family has experienced, and the idea that nobody has to be afraid. Nobody's going to pick up the book of the New Covenant and start doing shit. Sorry, and stuff. Nobody's
evil.
doing that.
No more perpetrating evil.
There's none of that. And if there was ever a message that we wanted to get across with this documentary, is everyone is safe.
We would not be speaking out so publicly if it was anybody who could, that we were afraid of coming after us. Like it's not a thing anymore.
So we can't speak for our siblings, but we sure as hell can speak up for them. And we want to speak up for the ones who have suffered the most.
Oh, can we say about Aaron now? I just need to say that.
I don't know that we should tell other people's stories.
No, just the time.
Oh,
The
right.
age.
Yes, please do.
Yes. Okay. So in the documentary, I'm sorry, we're going off the path here, but this really meant so much to us.
This needs a fine point.
Fine point, yes. So when they talk about Aaron as one of the KOGers who was put in charge and made a grand patriarch, and he orchestrated horrific things, him being burdened with this grand patriarch title, And then they finally did catch him. And then in the documentary, it says his age and stuff. And then when you do the math, he was made a Grand Patriarch when he was 17 years old.
Listen, people.
He was a kid who was seriously hindered in his life.
Traumatized,
And-
abused, neglected, abandoned, literally everything horrible you can expect to
And
happen
then
to a
this
person.
responsibility of carrying out the book of the new covenant was put on him at
Jesus.
17.
Can
And
we have,
he's been brainwashed his whole life. He like thinks now this is what he has to do.
can we have some compassion?
Right.
Please, can we have some compassion and empathy for people
For
who've
good
suffered
people,
so much?
good, kind, sincere-hearted people. And the other thing is that I'm just gonna say this one little thing, and I know I'm probably telling too much, but by the time he was like 21, he, super smart kid, realized that this was not the right path and started actively trying to dismantle whatever power he had and telling people, go get educated, pay your taxes, become a citizen, he on his own started trying to dismantle the stuff that was put upon him. And I don't even know how a 21-year-old figures this out, but he figured it out with such conviction that he was willing to tear down what he'd grown up in.
And keep in mind that when you didn't stick with the party line and stay with the cult and the narrative and all that, you put a target on your back. He was risking his life to say these things to his siblings that were still part of the KOG. So he was a leader. Yes, he did horrible things, but then as soon as he knew better, he did better.
But we're not making light. They were
No.
horrible things. These were things that hurt us to
Yes.
the core of our souls.
Hurt so many people we love and care about.
But we understand when you have someone who's mentally ill, you don't put them in prison forever. You put them in a mental institution and get them better.
Get
When
them
someone
help.
is brainwashed, like severely brainwashed from birth, you put them in prison forever instead of let's get them unbrainwashed
Yeah,
and let them go live their lives.
yeah.
That's what I
I
think.
was just thinking, Celia, like this would be a good part of your book that I would read. Like the redemption story, the story of your siblings, like the fact that all of these brothers, Ervil and all of his brothers, all of their kids are left to pick up these pieces. And I would love to hear more about that. So I'm with Anna. You need to write the book.
So I
All
know
right.
we went on and on.
We are just saying things you did not intend for us to talk about, but because the documentary is so fresh, there were these pieces of it, nuggets of it that were like, oh, I wish that had been done a little bit differently, or we could have expounded on that a little more.
So
But
this is
overall,
why-
we do love it, just so
This
you
is
know.
why episode 6 is so important.
Yeah. Okay.
That
But we're-
was going to be my next question. I was going to see if you had hesitations telling the story. I guess we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but you're the faces. You're putting your faces behind this name and the weight of the story. And so were you nervous to put yourself out there?
I 100% was. And the only reason I'm involved in this at all, the only reason I'm doing it at all is because of Anna. Anna just keeps charging forward, paving the way and dragging me along. And then I'm like, this is good. We're doing a good thing. We're helping change the narrative, I hope, of our family.
But when we talked about doing it, we knew that this is a way to change the narrative that LeBaron's children are bloodthirsty killers.
Yeah.
This
They're
is
so vilified.
they're so vilified, and
did
every
terrible
time the LeBaron name gets tagged in the news or whatever, it's like this story pops up and all the drama and salacious stuff gets talked about again. But the real story that's happened is the past 30 years since the cult burned itself to the ground. The real story is those of us who picked up the pieces and moved on.
It's a story of
So-
redemption, not in a religious way.
But we talk about, the hesitancies, Celia and I both know and felt the weight of responsibility of telling the story in a responsible way, that we tried our best and didn't want to harm anybody in our family in telling this story, because there's so many people who bringing it back up from the past and bringing it back into the media and into the news and into, headlines. And here, there's a lot of people in our family who wish this story would just stay in the past.
Yeah.
And
A lot of family.
And there was a time period when I still wanted the story to stay in the past. But there's also a time for telling the story and speaking the truth and correcting the egregious errors that are in the media, egregious things that are being told about our family members that just are not true.
And especially not true anymore.
Not true anymore.
It might have been at one point.
Correct.
But it is
Thank
not
you.
not the truth anymore.
And so when I wrote my book, we had family members that were very unhappy that I was telling the story, but the overwhelming good that has come from it has been a good reason to do it, and a good reason to do this again and bring this forward again because of the overwhelming good that can happen. We hope that anyone who connects the dots between our family and people that they know in life right now, instead of judging them, will say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee or let's go grab lunch. Let's talk about this. If you know somebody who's connected, like kindness and compassion and empathy are what's needed in this world and what's needed towards our family who have suffered so much. And while we say that, we also understand that the harm that was done in the past caused suffering to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And so we also honor and respect that. Us bringing it up brings it up for the victims and the loved ones of the people that were harmed. And so we do our best to walk this really fine line of talking about it in ways that are redemptive and that bring healing and wholeness to people and wholeheartedness, while at the same time understanding that there's people who are have wounds that are opened afresh when this story comes up.
But we hope in the end it brings more goodness and more healing than pain.
And that is always what has driven the work that we've done to bring this story to light.
And when we were given a platform to do it, there's a lot of, well, will I tell it right? What if I mess something up? What if it brings more harm upon our family? And we just have to do it afraid and just do it with the best intentions and with, our heart shining forward and hope that it's received in the way we intended.
Yeah,
And our family.
I think it's so apparent in the way that you all talk about it and your compassion. And certainly when I've worked with you, that's always been your guiding principle, which I think is really beautiful. And it sort of pairs well with the work that I'm doing in the larger Mormon community, right? And the thing I was thinking about as you're talking is how many times I've seen people use the emoji with the brain exploding for this. And I was thinking about that, like, this was such a normal story for you, like this, you lived it. So you didn't know that it was, a mind-blowing story. So I want to talk about what that's like for you for a minute. Like for you, did you know that your life was normal? Did it feel normal to you growing up? When did you figure out, wait a minute, this is not normal?
I know when it was for me.
You go ahead.
So when I was a little tiny girl, 4 or 5, 6, 4 or 5, I felt perfectly normal and I didn't know anything was wrong and had no idea that we were any different than anybody else. And then when I was 6, we moved to Ensenada, Mexico. And I was born in Mexico. So I had known Spanish, I guess, as a little girl, but we moved away when I was 3, but then into California and then moved back to a different part of Mexico, in Baja California. And I was put in school where I didn't know any Spanish anymore. I knew yes, no, and bear in Spanish. And it was during that time, it was coming back from Mexico to the US, because I don't know exactly what caused this shift, but I knew I was different. after that. I guess the brainwashing was taking place. I remember going and doing little Sunday school classes and learning, you know, all the little Mormon hymns and being taught the story of Abraham and having to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar. You have to be willing to take a life in order to prove yourself to God. You have to be in the ready to do that if he asks it of you. And I remember learning that just as a little tiny girl. It was taught, can I say it was taught to me? I can't say that.
I wouldn't.
Okay, I won't say your
That's her
name.
story.
So anyway, one of my dad's other wives, we would go to Sunday school in her living room. And I remember that was one of and then the other story that I remember learning in that little Sunday school class was the story of Solomon and Bathsheba and polygamy. So I think that was part of it. And, but when I got back to the US and went to school, 3rd grade, where I'm a really good reader now, just I want you to know, but I had learned to read in Spanish before I learned to read in English. So when I moved back to California when I was like 3rd grade, I had to go into remedial reading because I didn't know how to read in English yet. And it was coming back then, from that, I knew I was different. What about you?
Well, I didn't know I was raised in a cult.
No, we still don't know that.
It wasn't until I got out, really. And when I ran away from home, I wasn't really escaping a cult because I didn't know I was in one.
But you must have known you were different before that. When we were working in the warehouse and we didn't get to do normal kid things.
But I don't know that I was actually connecting those dots and saying, oh my gosh, we're so different.
Oh no, I thought we were different and better.
Did you have access to like pop culture or television? Like, were you allowed
Very
any of that
little,
stuff?
very, very little.
Very little.
The rebellious people sometimes had like radios and listened to, you know, songs. But I knew that wasn't holy, so I didn't. You know, I remember there was anyway. A few songs that I remember were quite scandalous, but anyway, they all are actually when you think about it. But as a child, kind of understanding what it was, and it was like, you can't listen to that to other siblings or step siblings or whatever. But no, I wasn't rebellious, so I didn't. You know what though? I have to say, it depends on where you're living and whose household you're in.
True.
Because I remember living in Oklahoma and I think I turned 13 in Oklahoma and they used to listen to Rod Stewart and stuff.
Oh.
If you want my body, I didn't even know what it said. I thought it was if you want my money but I used to sing along. But anyway.
I think I'm sexy. Like,
I know, but I just,
you did talk about the Olivia Newton-John jumpsuit. So you had that reference.
Yes.
We did listen to that record.
Well, Heber did.
Heber was in love with Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah.
So he did have that record, but it was not often and it was not around parents usually, except in Oklahoma. I make that exception. We were always listening to music. Under the Shenots, whenever we were living around the Shenots, they were always just a little bit more liberal.
No. Worldly,
not politically. I'm talking about. They were worldly.
When we moved to Houston from Denver, in Denver we were under Dan Jordan, who we talk about. And when we moved to Houston and we were under Mark,
because he's a Shenoth,
they let us go to the movies. They let us
to watch Fantasia, like it was rated G. And Cinderella.
What did we go see? No. There was other ones we went and saw. We went to the dollar movies a lot. Remember Mom used to take us to the dollar movie, and then before going to the dollar movie, she would go to the donut store and buy the day old donuts. Because I mean, she had like 20 kids to buy for. So, you know, you do the day old ones. And we would get the donuts, eat the donuts, and then go to the dollar show. And we watched that horrible one that Mom walked us out of.
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, about the cult and the people
with the surrounding the RV and the fire and oh my gosh, that was awful. Yeah. She made us leave that one.
The cult show. We had to watch that one.
Of some kind, I don't know.
We can't watch culty things.
So and then Mark and Dwayne and Ed used to go to Gilly's bar in Pasadena, I think it is.
In Houston.
Near Houston. And I was just shocked that they would drink.
They sometimes drink beer. That is not a typical, Mormon.
So I would say that culture shock of going to live under Mark's, benevolent, care, more so than the other we had experienced, it was more culture shock for us to be allowed to watch movies and go to watch TV.
Skating, we
But
just skating
he would
rink and
take
listen
us-
to regular songs.
Mark would take us to the skating rink every Friday night. And, and we got to listen to the music and enjoy it. And
REO
you know,
Speedwagon.
and Phil Collins' Air
Yeah.
Tonight, I think that song is called. That I just loved it, and that drum roll in the middle of it, just so powerful.
So Mark, the Shanoffs were just a little bit more worldly. They were great and they were loved, but they were a little bit more worldly. When we were under other people, it was very rigid.
That was more of a, oh my gosh, how is this possible?
Right.
Than me recognizing we were different than the world.
Well, that brings me to my next question. And a lot of people in the chat are asking similar questions to this too, which is, so you have this kind of abnormal, if you will, upbringing. So how, and you're both so brave now and put together and successful, and you've overcome so much with so little resources. So what challenges have you had trying to integrate your experiences with your upbringing versus where you're at today?
It's super challenging. I remember getting out of the cult, and when I ran away, I remember when I was like starting to date a little bit, like and I remember being around people that were, not raised the way I was, and feeling very insecure about not understanding things. I didn't know what an alma mater was. I didn't know what an MBA was. There was terminology, because college and education was never part of, the plan for our lives. And so there's a lot of like hesitancy. I became a little bit like standoffish, I would say, because I didn't know things that I should have known at my age. And so it took a long time, I think, to feel integrated and to feel normal.
Now, one of the challenges that I've had is the way I parented. Because I went from, Mormon fundamentalism, escaped that, and then kind of found myself in the middle of Christian fundamentalism, which was also very harmful. And I did that until I graduated from high school. So from 13 to 19 or 20, when I got out of that. And then I got married. So all of those things formed and shaped how I parented. And it also was challenging to try to be in a marriage when I had never had a model of what a husband and wife relationship looked like that was healthy. And so, when I got married and had 5 children with the boy that I met in high school, and, all that, we had 5 children together, and we really tried hard for 17 years to make that marriage work. But neither one of us came equipped with the understanding of what it was to have a healthy marriage. And so that marriage didn't work. But in addition, the parenting, I have so many regrets about how I parented my children. And because it was more from fear than from, just a place of kindness and love and goodness. And
Though she loved them. And they know that.
I
and they
love my
her.
children. They love me. We're
Yeah.
very connected to this day. They're all grown up now. And, I've had to go back to them and apologize and make repairs where I could about the ways in which the way I parented was not as healthy as it could have been. And so I'm emotional about that, because my children are obviously the most important thing to me in this world. Well, now my grandchild, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. And so, it's just, those were probably the biggest challenges that I faced that affected my life the most and affected the people that I care about the most, which is my children. And so making repair, I've told my children, if you decide to go to counseling, I'll pay for it.
Same here.
Because this is real. And, I've been through a combined 10 years of therapy, and I wished I had done therapy before I had children, but that's just not how it worked out.
But can I just say that I always remind my children that I adore, I have 3, grown. I raised you a heck of a lot better than I was raised. And my oldest daughter, she's almost 30, she's actually a therapist who specializes in trauma. She's like, Mom, that's a really low bar.
So, yeah, my kids say, we can't complain about very much because you had it so much worse.
I love that, and I appreciate that. I'm a proponent of therapy as well, especially, you know, dealing with folks who have similar upbringings, situations. I think everyone that has access to it should absolutely do that work. Well, we're getting on in time, so I want to just kind of hear your closing thoughts. And I want you to promote your book too, so people can go buy it, because that's one way that folks can support you. If there's other ways to support you both, let us know.
Yes.
But you've talked about it a lot in this episode, but I really wanted just to put a finer point on it. What message do you hope that the general public gets from this series? What is the ultimate outcome that you're asking folks to consider when they watch this?
Well, consider our siblings and the ones who have suffered the most, and find within your heart compassion for them and empathy for how much they suffered. That is one thing that we hope can happen. And the fact that it doesn't matter what your family of origin story is. You don't have to be born into a polygamous cult to have experienced childhood trauma, of neglect, abuse, abandonment, any of those kinds of things that, you know, significantly affect your life going into your adulthood. So if you've experienced anything like that, we hope that our message of hope and healing, that all of that is possible. That you can create a life for yourself that you're proud of.
If you were born into a toxic family, don't give them power over the rest of your life. Choose to have joy, choose to have happiness, choose to do the work to make your life what you want it to be. Don't stay in a place of feeling sorry and always victimhood, just because they shouldn't have that kind of power.
Yeah.
Take your power back.
So redemption, hope, positive, kindness, compassion, love, joy, all those good things, find them. And all of those things reside within each of us. But you have to sometimes unpack all the garbage that's on top of them and, you know, take out the trash. And then you get to experience those things that are buried within you. And they were within all of us. They're within
Like
all
Anna
of us.
started the documentary, we were born good.
Yeah.
I just love that.
We were. Not just Ervil's children. Every one of Ervil's children was born good, but not just Ervil's children. Everyone on earth is born good.
That's a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much. Anna, do you want to just plug your book so people know where to find more of your story?
Well, it's called The Polygamous Daughter, and it's available anywhere you buy books. I highly recommend that you find an independent bookstore that you can purchase it from. If you
Lindsay can recommend one.
Yes.
Benchmark Books. Go to Benchmark Books. Thank you, Celia.
So it's also on Audible, and you don't even have to spend a credit on Audible because it's part of the Audible Plus library. So that helps
Oh,
me.
is it still one I can get free?
Yes.
Oh, good.
And if buying a book is not within the realm of possibility, libraries carry it. And if they don't have it in stock, they can get it through interlibrary loan. And
Or if a lot of people ask, they'll carry it.
Right. So, and you can follow me on all my socials. Wherever you find me, it's Anna K. LeBaron. And also, because I'm going to keep pressuring this one to write her own book, in order to get a book contract, you need to have a lot of social media following. So find her on all her socials and follow her so that when we decide to write a book proposal, we can add all that to the book proposal, and one day you'll get to read Celia's book.
Isn't she
Well,
cute?
She is, and I agree with her. I'm serious.
Aw.
There's so much more to this story that, like,
Tell us in the chat if you want her to write a book.
Mm.
No pressure again.
the chat is going crazy, by the way. There are a million questions we didn't get to. So thank you for that. And I just want to, again, thanks to Grace Poole for doing our audio. Thanks to Sunstone for hosting this. And if you want to support what we're doing, if you want to hear more about the history of the family, you can check us out, sunstone.org, follow our podcast, our Facebook page. We're going to be putting this, right now it's in our watch group, but we're going to be putting it, sorry, my dog's sneezing. We're going to be putting it in on our Facebook page in a couple days, so this can be shareable. And yeah, support us at sunstone.org and follow us for more Mormon history. I have a podcast where we talk about the history of Mormonism from Joseph Smith up until present day. So yeah, thanks again, ladies. It's been so fun, in spite of all this heaviness, to go on this journey with you.
Well,
Thank
we
you.
love you and we love what you've done for our family and we appreciate you a lot.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Lindsay.
I love you guys too. Thanks so much. And thanks for everyone for listening and supporting.